And in every press conference after game 3, he would get on the stage and start demanding, where are my printouts? I want to see the logs of game 2.
IBM's team had dug in its heels and refused any kind of compliance. And Gary says, well, we're experimenting here, guys. Come on, give me a break. Cut me some slack.
It's rather improper to be asking to see exactly what your opponent was thinking. That would be like Kasparov saying to Karpov, okay, I want you to write an essay on every variation that you looked at during this game. That goes too far.
We had a crisis before, I think before game 4, when I insisted on the printouts to be released. They rushed out to my room saying, look, you can't, put all this pressure on IBM, you can't insist on this and that, and, the match will collapse. So it's talk, it was irrelevant because they couldn't do anything, they couldn't stop the match, but the fact they felt free to communicate to me directly and to say whatever they wanted, and I think it was a part of the game. So it always, had this pressure, always, add frustration.
Every day it was something new, and they were just playing with his mind, more pressure. Who decided to do this, I don't know, because large corporations are not known for this sort of stuff, I think it probably just started semi-accidentally, and they found it was working, and then everybody on their team got excited about the effect that it was obviously having.
For example, in one of the games, the computer crashed, and they just came in and started to repair it.
I looked at my mother and my coach, and I laughed and said something, and then the referee, and Carol Drake, she said, oh, silence, you couldn't talk to your people. I said, why not? They're talking to that guy all the time because they were just typing something in front of me. Yeah.
The human being wasn't even allowed to look at me and say, what's going on, Fred? Because I might be helping him in some way. Whereas the computer, there were people around it doing, nobody knew what was going on there.
And then it got to the point that before game 4, he quit. That was it, the match was over. And they had to convince him to come to the table. Nobody ever said anything about that publicly. I don't even think that's been reported anyplace. But he was fed up.
Jogo 4.
Maybe it was a bigger opportunity. It reached an end game, and he was not able to sufficiently outplay it in the end game.
The score is now even in the man versus machine chess match. Last night's game 4 between world champion Garry Kasparov and the IBM computer, Deep Blue, ended in a draw after 5 hours. Kasparov admitted he was too tired to go on.
Chess players tend to believe, and have always done this, that the opponent is using some forces against them. Today it's very simple, it's a computer. But in previous years it was magnetic forces, it was telepathic forces, or rays. They were always worried about these things, and for example in Fischer-Spassky, I think one of the players insisted that the chairs were dismantled to see if there were any devices in there that could be disturbing them.
He has a larger contingent of Russian players working with him in the second match. Then somehow, I don't know for sure, but that may be related to why they become a little bit more paranoid.
The next day, I get in the elevator, I go up to the 35th floor, where some security guard who thinks he's in the Secret Service greets me, takes me by the arm, shoves me into the elevator, and says, they want to talk to you downstairs. And then he gets on his walkie-talkie and, we've got him, Chief. We've got him. They take me downstairs. They throw me into this room basically this empty room, which is now, in my mind, the gulag. And they take off my press credentials, put a guard outside the door, and I'm not allowed to leave. Finally, somebody comes in and explains that story that I wrote, the original story, got onto the web unedited. What happened was there were two versions of the story. The editor punched the wrong button, and the original story went up on the web with all the complaints about everything. They accused me of hacking into the site and putting that story on the web. I said, listen, I don't even know what HTML means. How am I going to hack into this site? And he said, we're very suspicious of you. They were more paranoid at this point than the Kasparov people were.
Yeah, it's not a hotel in Moscow, but first of all, I think, the bugging is not a Russian invention. Yeah, and I think technology in the West and in particular in the US are probably even more superior. But if we press the subject, if any further, people will say, yeah, they got paranoid because, people behind the stage helping the blue camera or a telescope recording all the moves, the rooms bugged. Look, some of them might be true, some not, I don't know, but I don't have any proof, and I don't want even to go much into these details. It's just to demonstrate the way the people felt during the match. Fred, what are you doing?
Looking at the buildings across on the other side, and suddenly in one window I saw something round and shiny, and it looked like a photographic lens. So I went to another window and looked out, and Gary said, what are you doing? And I said, oh, just let me look. I didn't know what's going on. So I took his lawyer at the time who was there. We went downstairs and we went to the side of the building. We looked into the building with the binoculars, and his lawyer said, my God, it's not a camera, it's a telescope.
When you are under such pressure, you could look around and just find that the most innocent object is posing a deadly danger for you.
Chess has a long tradition of psychological warfare. And when you notice that your opponent is deeply disturbed by something, what you generally do in chess is to try and help him to invigorate this fear. For example, if you can see that he's being disturbed by nicotine, by smoke, you put a cigar on the table. Or if he doesn't like a person in the audience, he's worried about that person, get that person up front, make that person stare at him. So you encourage him in his paranoid feelings. And at some stage in this match, we had a feeling that somebody was doing this to Gary.
So there was an agreement at last. IBM buckled and said what it would do, it was print out all of its log files from all games, turn it over at the end of the match to the arbiter, which they did not. So they violated that agreement.
Jogo 5.
Deep Blue and Gary Kasparov, the world chess champion and the IBM supercomputer, played to a draw in yesterday's fifth match. Some said Kasparov played more like a supercomputer and Deep Blue more like a human. There are one game each and 3 draws going into today's final match, in which Deep Blue has the advantage of making the first move. Winner gets $700,000, the loser $400,000. Forget the $300,000, says international chess master Maurice Ashley. The future of humanity is on the line. Now the weather.
By this point, pretty much everybody knew what was going on, the tensions backstage. When Gary walked on the stage after Game 5, and he was exhausted and you can clearly depressed, they gave him a standing ovation. And I thought he was going to burst out into tears. It was one of the most moving moments I've ever seen in my life. It was amazing. And he was just so warmed by it, and so was everybody in the crowd. And then came the whole IBM programming team, and they walked out there and just, aren't we the greatest? And they booed.